Sure, you've heard that Ukraine has already lost 4 F-16 aircraft. That's approximately 10% of what the Allies provided.
When we came back to the war after training, we faced a brutal reality. The tactics we were taught abroad don't exactly fit this war.
Does this indicate that the Russian army is no pushover? Or does it mean the F-16's time is running out? You've heard that American fighters seem to have fitted successfully into Ukraine's air defense system and are shooting down missiles and UAVs. But regarding strike missions, Russian air defense leaves no chances, because it shoots down targets even in the sky over Ukrainian-controlled territory, at a distance of up to 200 kilometers from the front line.
We had to come up with different tactics. Now our Western partners who trained us are studying our experience and adjusting their own tactics.
What is this about? It turned out to be a very risky and sharp attacking style. No army in the world operates this way. However, it is impossible to overcome multi-layered air defense in any other way. And if you add to this the Russian Su-35s and MiG-31s that hunt for F-16s around the clock, that's a total game over. But right now, using the example of a specific mission, you'll find out how Ukrainian F-16 pilots outsmarted Russian ground-based air defense and Russian fighter pilots who are constantly on patrol along the front line. Along with this, you'll understand how powerful the Russians' air defense is and how the F-16s are trying to survive under this insane pressure. But before that, support the channel's growth by liking this video and subscribing. It takes a second, but it means everything to our team. So, let's start with the fact that after heavy losses at the beginning of the war, the Russians abandoned attempts to wage a classic struggle for air superiority like the USA does, but instead, they created something else, an air defense dome that reaches into Ukrainian airspace to a depth of up to 200 kilometers from the front line. Basically, it's a multi-layered network. Ground-based long-range SAM systems like the S-300 and S-400 Triumph create deep engagement zones at distances of up to 200 to 400 kilometers. Buk M2 and M3 operate at medium range, 30 to 70 kilometers. Tor, Pantsir, OSA, and Strela systems cover the short-range zone up to 10 to 15 kilometers. Plus, there's an extensive radar network.
The front line is very saturated with anti-aircraft missile complexes. Missiles fly at us during every sortie.
To stay safe, Ukrainian pilots started flying low to the ground. Did it help? On one hand, yes. Radars work in a straight line, but the Earth is round. Because of this, at long range, a radar simply can't see a plane hugging the surface. This helps the aircraft stay invisible to long-range air defense systems for as long as possible. Until the plane pops up over the horizon, air defense is powerless. Moreover, when a fighter with AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles suddenly appears over the horizon, the air defense system itself becomes the target. But on the other hand, Ukrainian fighters are forced to operate exclusively in a narrow corridor, from a few dozen to a few hundred meters above the ground. This limits maneuvering capabilities and allows the Russians to set ambushes where Russian fighters play the role of the center forward. How does this go down? The Irbis E radar on the Su-35 is capable of spotting fighters at distances from 200 kilometers in normal mode to 400 kilometers in a narrow scan. Plus, it has a look-down/shoot-down mode. The Zaslon radar on the MiG-31 is a bit more modest, 280 kilometers. However, both the Su-35 and MiG-31 can carry various types of air-to-air missiles, including the long-range R-37M. This is the most modern and dangerous missile in the Russian arsenal because it flies much farther than the longest-range U.S. Air Force missile, the AIM-1 20C8. The R-37M is capable of hitting targets at a distance of 200 kilometers according to confirmed data, and up to 400 kilometers according to the Russians. On top of that, the missile speed hits Mach 6. As you can imagine, when Su-35Ss or MiG-31BMs are on patrol in the air, the situation for Ukrainian pilots gets seriously complicated. But as you also probably understand, Ukrainians, even in their old MiGs and Sus that remain in service, have learned to evade Russian fighters that have a clear technical advantage. it's time to move on to the mission that will put everything into perspective. So, 3 F-16s take to the skies. But not just because it looks cool. 2 aircraft have to provide cover and guide their third colleague to the strike position. The target is a juicy Russian location on the ground. Right now, high-value targets include tactical-level command posts and even the UAV crews of the Russian Rubicon unit, which are considered the most effective unit in the Russian army. Taking out their group means saving a lot of Ukrainian fighters.
Russian aircraft became the main obstacle.
While the F-16s are flying at low altitude, they remain unseen. But on the approach to the front line, the onboard radar warning receiver notifies the Ukrainian pilots that they are already in the crosshairs of a Su-35. Here it must be noted that the F-16 AM/BM-MLU modification, which Ukraine received from Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Norway, features an updated onboard threat library. This was done by specialists from the American 68th Electronic Warfare Squadron, who worked on adapting the F-16 to Ukrainian conditions. The system identifies the Su-35 radar and alerts the F-16 pilot. Then, when the enemy radar switches from search to lock-on mode, the system warns the F-16 pilot with a distinct audio signal. But this time, the Ukrainians didn't wait for the Su-35 pilot to pick a target. They deliberately exposed themselves to Russian missiles.
We forced them to fire 2 missiles because there were 2 launches from different directions.
Here is where the most interesting part begins. So, the Russians fired 2 missiles, but 3 F-16s went out on the mission, as you recall. Why didn't the Russian Sus fire more? Think they ran out of missiles? No way! The Su-35 was created as a long-range superiority fighter, and that's exactly how Russia uses it. Not for dogfights, but to control airspace through the threat of a launch. Basically, it's a flying platform of missile pressure. It's essentially a missile warehouse with wings. So another factor is at play here. The Su-35 pilot simply doesn't see the third F-16. How is that possible since the Falcon isn't a stealth aircraft? Here's what actually happened. Judging by everything, the pilot of the third F-16 in this group is executing a special defensive maneuver called notching, which breaks the enemy radar lock and makes missile guidance impossible. To do this, he turns the plane sideways to the Su-35's radar beam. The thing is, modern pulse Doppler radars only see moving targets that are either approaching or receding. If a target moves perpendicular to the beam, its speed from the radar's perspective is 0. So the system considers it clutter and filters it out. In this way, the Su-35's radar fools its own pilot. Thanks to this, the Ukrainian F-16 calmly reaches the strike position. And as you can see, its GBU-62s turn the Russian unit's storage facilities into dust. But what happened to those 2 F-16s that had 2 missiles sent their way? Most likely, they escaped thanks to another interesting feature. Official videos from Ukraine clearly show special Terma PIDS Plus and EKIPS Plus pylons. They have built-in system sensors that provide a 360-degree view and spot approaching missiles by their heat signature. If you maneuver smartly at low altitude, the missile bleeds energy. And if you pop countermeasures at the right moment, the missile loses the target. Of course, notching isn't a Ukrainian invention. The maneuver was actively used by US pilots in Vietnam, Lebanon, Iraq. Fighter pilots all over the world are still taught it. However, few dare to use it in combat because radars with active electronically scanned arrays make the notching maneuver much less effective thanks to their massive computing power. For example, the Russian Su-57 is much harder to fool using notching. Fortunately for Ukrainian pilots, Russia does not yet have a large number of Su-57s. However, Ukrainian pilots have plenty of other problems even without that. Russian troops view the F-16s as target number 1. The main strikes are directed at their home airfields with the goal of destroying the aircraft on the ground. That's why Ukrainians are actively using non-operational F-16 aircraft that they received from the USA. These aircraft don't have engines, radars, or electronics. Placing such empty fuselages on airfields misleads the Russians and diverts attention from the real aircraft. Also, the Ukrainians have implemented ACE tactics, Agile Combat Employment. Its essence is simple. During a threat, aircraft pilots must quickly relocate across different airfields.
We can go out on a mission from one airfield and quickly redeploy to another airfield. It is difficult for the enemy to detect the location of our aircraft.
Besides survival and missions against ground targets, F-16s in Ukraine are actively used as an air defense component. Russia launches dozens of missiles and hundreds of drones at Ukraine every day. F-16 pilots already have over 1,000 destroyed targets under their belt.
We have cases where a single F-16 destroyed 6 cruise missiles in one sortie.
If you want to see how that happened, our channel has a video about that terrible day when American F-16s and French Mirages fought off an attack of Russian drones and missiles. However, we haven't heard yet about the destruction of Russian aircraft by F-16 pilots. What's the problem with shooting down a Russian bird?
If we had the F-16 Block 70/72, then our tally would include not only destroyed attack drones and cruise missiles, but also enemy aircraft.
The Block 70/72 version is already the next era of the aircraft's evolution. The F-16 in this modification has an AESA, Active Electronically Scanned Array Radar, which sees further, is more resistant to jamming, and can track more targets simultaneously. This is not just an improvement, it is essentially a different aircraft. Will we see it in this war? Write your opinion in the comments. And also write if you are impressed by the tactics used by Ukrainian F-16 pilots. And if that wasn't enough action for you, then in these playlists you'll find grittier episodes of the Russian-Ukrainian war. In the sky, on the ground, and at sea. Stay safe.